Picture this. You're sitting at the dinner table. Your adult child is there. Maybe your grandchildren are there too. And then, out of nowhere, your son or your daughter says something to you that stops you cold. Maybe it's a dismissive eye roll. Maybe it's a sharp, cutting remark. Maybe it's a tone so condescending, so impatient, that you feel like a child being scolded in your own home. And you just sit there. You don't know what to say. So you say nothing. You smile through the sting. You change the subject. And later that night, lying in bed, you replay that moment over and over, wondering, when did my own child stop respecting me? And what am I supposed to do about it? If that scene feels familiar, I want you to know something. What you felt in that moment was not weakness. It was the natural response of a loving parent who didn't want to blow things up. But here's what I've learned in over 4 decades as a family psychologist. Silence, while it feels like peace, is actually permission. And today, that changes. In this video, I'm going to give you 7 specific questions, 7 calm, dignified, psychologically powerful questions that you can use the next time your adult child disrespects you. These aren't lines designed to start a war. They're designed to hold up a mirror. To make your child stop, look at their own behavior, and genuinely reconsider. Because here's the truth. Your child doesn't need you to scream. They need you to be unshakable. And these questions will make you exactly that. Before we dive in, if you're new here, welcome to Strong Elderly Life, a channel dedicated to helping people over 60 live with strength, dignity, and joy. Please hit that like button and subscribe. You'd be surprised how many people out there are going through exactly what you're going through, and they need this too. Let's begin. I want to start by addressing something that almost every parent I've counseled has said to me at some point. They say, I just don't want to make things worse. I don't want to push them away. And I understand that. Deeply. When you've spent your life loving someone, the idea of confronting them, even calmly, feels like a risk you can't afford to take. So you absorb the disrespect. You tell yourself it wasn't a big deal. You make excuses for them. They're stressed. They're busy. They didn't mean it. Maybe. But here's what happens over time when you consistently absorb disrespect without addressing it. First, the behavior doesn't stop. It escalates. When there are no consequences, even gentle conversational consequences, a person learns that this behavior is acceptable. Every time you swallow it, you're sending the message, you can do this. I won't push back. Second, it quietly destroys the relationship from the inside. The resentment you carry, because yes, you do carry it, even if you don't say it out loud, builds like pressure under a closed lid. You start dreading their calls. You feel anxious before family gatherings. The warmth you once felt begins to cool. And then one day, you realize you've drifted apart without ever having a real conversation about why. Third, and this one I cannot say strongly enough, it hurts your health. Research in family psychology consistently shows that suppressing emotional pain, particularly pain connected to close relationships, contributes to increased anxiety, disrupted sleep, and a diminished sense of self-worth. You matter. Your emotional health matters. Now, I am not telling you to pick a fight. I am not telling you to deliver ultimatums. What I'm telling you is this. You don't need to raise your voice to hold your ground. You just need the right words. And those words are questions, because a good question doesn't attack. It reflects. It asks the other person to look at themselves. Here are the 7 that have changed families I've worked with for the better. Question 1. Would you speak to your boss the way you just spoke to me? Let that one sit for a moment. Because here's what's fascinating from a psychological standpoint. Most adult children who are disrespectful to their parents are perfectly polite, even gracious, with their employers, their colleagues, even their friends. They know how to manage their tone. They know how to choose their words. They exercise restraint every single day at work. But with you, the parent who fed them, clothed them, stayed up nights worrying about them, with you, the filter disappears. Why? Because you are safe. In the emotional economy of human relationships, parents, especially devoted ones, represent unconditional love. And somewhere in the unconscious mind of an adult child, that can translate into, they'll forgive me no matter what, so I don't have to try as hard. In therapy, we call this the safest target dynamic. The people we love the most sometimes absorb the worst of us, precisely because they're the ones least likely to abandon us over it. That doesn't make it right. And this question names it directly. I counseled a woman named Margaret, 67 years old, retired teacher, one of the warmest people I've ever met. Her son, in his late 30s, had developed a habit of cutting her off mid-sentence, speaking over her, and sighing loudly when she expressed an opinion. One afternoon, after he'd snapped at her over the phone, she calmly said, "Would you speak to your supervisor the way you just spoke to me?" Silence. Then his voice changed, and he said quietly, "No, I wouldn't." That was the beginning of a real conversation. When you ask this question, keep your voice level. Not cold, calm. You're not accusing. You're asking them to apply their own standards evenly. Question 2. Do you realize what you just said, or did it just slip out? This question is gentler than it looks, and that's intentional. Here's something important that gets lost in these conflicts. Not all disrespect is deliberate. In fact, in my experience, a significant portion of hurtful words from adult children are habitual and unconscious. They've developed a way of speaking to you, a tone, a pattern, that they've stopped noticing. Like a radio playing in the background. They don't even hear it anymore. When you ask this question, you are doing two things simultaneously. First, you are flagging the behavior without making it a full-scale accusation. You're not saying you disrespected me. You're asking, did you notice what just happened? That's a much easier door for someone to walk through. It allows them to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, that came out wrong," without feeling like they're confessing to a crime. Second, you are giving them the benefit of the doubt, which, believe it or not, is a power move. Because it communicates. I think you're better than this. Let's see if you agree. I worked with a father, 72 years old, whose daughter had developed a habit of dismissing everything he said with a phrase, "Dad, that's not how it works anymore." It happened so often that she didn't even realize she was doing it. He finally asked her, "Honey, do you realize how often you say that to me?" She looked genuinely surprised, and then ashamed. She'd had no idea. The wake-up call is often the beginning of the change. Ask this question with warmth in your voice. You're not scoring points. You're shining a light. Question 3. Is this how you'd want your children to speak to you one day? If your adult child has children of their own, grandchildren you love, this question will stop them in their tracks. Because every parent, regardless of how they're behaving in the moment, has a deep, primal desire to be a good role model. They want to raise children who are kind, respectful, emotionally intelligent. And most of them haven't connected the dots between what they're doing right now, in front of you, possibly in front of those grandchildren, and what their own children are absorbing. Children are not recorders that only switch on at the moments we choose. They are watching constantly. They are absorbing tone of voice, body language, patterns of interaction. When your grandchild sees their parents speak condescendingly to you, "Grandma, Grandpa," they are filing that away. They are learning that this is how adults treat their parents. One generation's behavior becomes the next generation's template. This question asks your adult child to look 30 years into the future, to imagine themselves at your age, sitting across from their own grown child, and ask, "Is this what I want?" I remember a session with a couple, both in their late 60s, whose daughter had been particularly sharp-tongued during a holiday visit. When the mother quietly asked her, "Sweetheart, is this how you'd want Emma to speak to you when she's grown?" the daughter went completely still. Her own little girl was sitting right there at the table, watching. She didn't say a word, but something shifted in her eyes. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is make someone see themselves through time. Question 4. What exactly have I done to deserve being spoken to like this? Now, this one requires a little more courage, because it is direct. But notice, it is not defensive. It is not an accusation. It is a genuine request for clarity. When adult children are disrespectful, it's often because there is frustration underneath. Frustration they haven't been able to articulate. Maybe they have a real grievance. Maybe they're carrying an old wound that was never addressed. Maybe they're exhausted, and you happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. By asking, "What exactly have I done?" you are calling their bluff, gently but firmly. You are saying, "If there's a reason for this, let's talk about it. But if there isn't, then I need you to look at what you're doing." What typically happens is one of two things. Either they name something real, a specific hurt, a pattern they've resented, and suddenly you have the foundation for an actual conversation. That is a good outcome, even if it's uncomfortable. Or they can't name anything. They realize, in the silence that follows, that they don't have a justifiable reason. And that realization is powerful. It's impossible to feel entirely righteous about your behavior when you can't defend it. One gentleman I worked with, a 70-year-old retired firefighter, tough as nails, told me that when he asked his son this question after a particularly dismissive exchange, his son opened his mouth to respond and then just stopped. After a long pause, he said, "I don't know, Dad. I'm sorry." It was the first real apology in years. Ask the question calmly. Don't fill the silence after. Let them sit with it. Question 5. Do you understand that I won't always be here? I want to be very careful about how I frame this one because I know it can sound like emotional manipulation. It isn't. It is simply, and honestly, the most important truth in the room. You will not always be here. None of us will. That's not a threat. That is the most factual statement any human being can make. And here's what I have witnessed, time and again, over 40 years of sitting with grieving families. The most common thing adult children say at their parents' funerals, at their bedsides in hospice, in the months after they are gone, is, "I wish I had said I was sorry." Not, "I wish we had taken more trips." Not, "I wish we had called more." The wish, almost always, is about something they said or the way they treated them. A particular moment, a particular tone, a particular cruelty, large or small. This question brings that future moment into the present. It doesn't ask your child to imagine grief in an abstract way. It asks them to look at you, right now, today, and understand that time is finite. The moments you are sharing right now are the ones they will remember. It may make them uncomfortable. It may even make them emotional. But discomfort is not harm. Sometimes discomfort is the very thing that changes behavior when nothing else can. Say it gently. Say it without bitterness. Say it as the truth it is. Question 6. Are you okay? Because the person I raised wouldn't speak to me like that. This is my personal favorite of the 7. Because it does something extraordinary. It sets a firm boundary while simultaneously expressing love. Think about what this question communicates. First, it says, "I know who you are. I know the person I raised." And this right here, that's not them. That is not an attack on your child's character. It is an appeal to their best self. You are reminding them of who they are at their core. Second, it asks, "Are you okay?" Which opens a door. Because sometimes the adult child who lashes out at a parent isn't doing so out of malice. They are overwhelmed. They are struggling financially, relationally, professionally. They are in pain. And that pain is coming out sideways, directed at the person they feel safest with. Now, does that excuse it? No. But understanding it changes how you respond. And asking, "Are you okay?" invites them to be honest instead of defensive. I had a client, a 65-year-old mother of 3, whose middle son had become increasingly curt and dismissive with her over about 6 months. She was hurt and baffled. One day, after a particularly cold phone call, she called him back and said, "Honey, are you okay? Because the son I raised doesn't talk to me that way, something must be wrong. He broke down. His marriage was falling apart, and he had told no one. That phone call opened the door to the most honest conversation they'd had in years. Your love is not a weakness. In this question, it becomes your greatest strength. Question 7. Can we start this conversation over with respect? And here we are. The 7th question. The one that puts everything into action. After everything that's been said, after the hurt, the silence, the tension, this question does something remarkable. It offers a fresh start, a do-over, a reset. But notice what it does not do. It does not pretend nothing happened. It does not let the behavior slide. It acknowledges implicitly that something went wrong, and it makes one clear, non-negotiable request: respect. Not agreement. Not obedience. Not unconditional approval. Just basic human respect. This question is the culmination of your emotional dignity. You are not angry. You are not issuing threats. You are simply saying, I am willing to keep talking. I want to keep talking, but not like that. Let's try again. It is extraordinarily difficult for an adult child to say no to this, because what would that say about them? To refuse to restart a conversation with their own parent with basic decency is a choice they would have to live with. Most won't make it. And when they accept, when they take a breath and begin again in a different tone, something changes between you. Not dramatically, not perfectly, but genuinely. In family therapy, we call this a repair moment. It is one of the most powerful things that can happen in a relationship. Not the absence of conflict, but the return to connection after it. That return, that willingness to begin again, is what love actually looks like in practice. And you made it happen. Not by screaming, not by giving in, but by asking the right question at the right time. I want to leave you with this. The 7 questions I shared with you today are not weapons. They are mirrors. When you ask them, calmly, clearly, without malice, you are holding up a reflection and asking your adult child to look at themselves honestly. And that is the most respectful thing you can do for them. Not the most comfortable thing, not the easiest thing, but the most respectful. Because it treats them as a full adult who is capable of doing better. It refuses to let them off the hook by pretending the hurt didn't happen. It holds the standard. You deserve to be spoken to with kindness. Not because you've been a perfect parent, none of us have. Not because you've never made a mistake, but because you are a human being who has given this person the entirety of your love, the best years of your life, and the deepest hope of your heart. That deserves respect. So here is what I want you to do. In the next few days, write these 7 questions down. Put them somewhere you can see them. Say them out loud. Yes, practice in the mirror. Not to rehearse a fight, but to find your voice. To feel the steadiness in your own chest when the words come out calm and clear. Because when the moment comes, and if it's already happening, it will come again, you won't be caught off guard. You'll be ready. And that readiness, that quiet, unshakable confidence is what changes the dynamic. You are not too old to set boundaries. You are not too late. And you are absolutely not alone. If this video resonated with you, if you saw yourself somewhere in what I described today, please share it. There is someone in your life, a friend, a neighbor, a fellow parent, who needs to hear these words. Pass it along. That one share might mean more than you know. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button right now. Every week here on Strong Elderly Life, we talk about living fully, powerfully, and with dignity after 60. Because this chapter of your life isn't the end of your story. It's one of the best parts. I'll see you in the next video. Take care of yourself. You've earned it.